And he had stayed at one of the hotels that I represented. And he was like, Patricia, I had such a great time. Like we, priority serviced him. He was like, but the only complaint that I have is you guys didn't have a fax machine. And I'm like,
What year
James,
was this now?
this is last year.
No, no,
This
no,
is
no, no,
last
no.
year.
Unhospitality, the #1 podcast in the world.
Well, guys, welcome to another episode of Unhospitality. I couldn't be more thrilled to invite my guest today. This person taught me a line that we'll get to in a little bit. PLU. Pin that word right there. We're going to reference it later. But I'd like to welcome to the podcast Patricia Herrera. Do you prefer Patty or Patricia for something like this?
I feel like here we could say Patty. I feel like this is a
Yeah.
good, audience to do that. Absolutely.
Well, then, Patty, welcome to Hospitality.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello, friends. So I know that you did kind of tee up the PLU, and we're going to go back to that, but I have to give credit to the person who actually taught me that.
Please, by all means.
Okay. So I worked with this great individual. She's still very much in the industry. She's with Four Seasons now. Her name is Jessica Tyler Baraton. This is before she was married. And she had said to me, like, oh, PLU, PLU. And I didn't have the confidence at that time because I was so in awe of her. I thought she was so cool and so fabulous and just like all put together that I was just like, okay, I'll figure it out one day. And so one day we're having drinks and I said, Jessica, I got to ask you something. And she was like, yeah, anything. And I was like, what is PLU? And she burst out laughing and she's like, it's people like us. She was like, what did you think I was saying this whole time? And I was like, I don't know. I just didn't have the courage to ask you. So anyway, I thought that was really cute. It really resonated. People like us is where you can be your authentic self and someone who gets it and just knows, the industry and just like whatever it is, just like your friend, like a true friend.
And the first weekend I met you, it took a while to warm up to each other. But when we finally did, you labeled me a PLU, and I've worn that crown as a badge of honor for ever
Absolutely.
since then.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you think about like, perceptions of people, right? And, especially in this industry that we're in, which is so great, and you think about hospitality as a whole, sometimes you put in your own, I guess, perceived, right, perceptions of
Facts.
what you expect someone to be or not to
So
be.
you're talking to someone on the phone, you're going through emails, you got a perception built up, but you haven't
On
met them in person
LinkedIn.
yet.
Yes, exactly, right? And so you're like, okay, this person, I'm not going to hit it off with them, or this person is probably into this or that, just based on essentially judging a book by its cover, which we all know is not what you're supposed to do. But I think just as humans, we sometimes fall into that, right?
We do.
So you and I had corresponded quite a bit. I saw your LinkedIn profile and I had a different perception of you completely,
You did.
And so it's funny because we talk about that now, right? And we're like, oh my God, I can't believe I thought you were like 5'5", you're 6'2". I thought you were like into, gaming. I don't know what I thought, but it was just completely different from who you are as an individual. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about this industry specifically, right? Because you get to meet and interact with so many different walks of life.
Yeah.
And you kind of find that aha moment, whether it's like, a shared experience or you like this or you grew up that way. And then it just becomes closer, right? And you solidify that and it just continues to grow. And I'll tell you another story.
Yeah.
I was in Brazil once doing a presentation and my Portuguese is, very limited, but I did study um pouquinho. So I studied for 5 years. My stepfather was Brazilian. He passed away. So I was very accustomed to it. Anyway, I go to this agency and I'm doing a presentation in English. Okay. And there's probably about like 15 people in the office. This is back in the day. We do like the lunch and learn. And I think I was representing New York City as a destination. Now, some of the people, you could tell they could pick up my English, a little bit of Spanish, a little Portuguese. I was talking about the boroughs. Okay. So you think about Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx. I mentioned Staten Island. This kid like Wu Tang. Você você he says it in Portuguese, like, "You said Wu-Tang?" And I'm like, or Staten Island, and then he's like, "Wu-Tang," and I'm like, "Yeah, what do you know about Wu-Tang?" He's like, "That's my favorite hip hop group," and
How
I'm like,
funny.
"What?" And looking at this person, I would have never thought that they liked, first of all, hip hop, let alone Wu-Tang Clan,
Of course.
right? And so, of course, I was like, "Oh my god, I love 36 Chambers." They were, like, talking about Method Man and all the different
How
artists and
funny.
ODB, and that was, like, our moment there that we bonded, you know?
How funny.
Yeah.
Speaking of ODB, you just brought up a memory for me. I had a sales manager in Puerto Rico. I was director of sales, and she would call me up. This is too funny. Renee, if you're listening, you're gonna crack up. She would call me up when she'd make a sale. You know, a lot of sales teams have the custom of like ringing the
The bell,
bell,
yeah.
whatever, when a contract closes. She would call me up and she goes, "Dirty, I got your money."
That's good, that's really
So that
good.
was our little thing. Whenever she closed a
Yeah,
piece of
and then
business, it
if
was
you
like,
collect, like, from customers, you could say, better have my
there
money,"
you go.
right? So it goes
Exactly. There you
twofold.
go. She could call me dirty. I wasn't gonna go there and call her that,
Of course, of course.
yeah, all these references, and I think that's you we talk about travel on this podcast. Obviously, it's all about hospitality. When you start to break down, you realize there's more that connects us and separates us when you get to places like that. You start to realize the cultural references that we can all point to that we all understand. But at the fundamental level of travel, we all want to feel welcome. We all want to feel like we connect in some way to somebody else. And I love that part of our industry where, again, two people from far flung places suddenly have a point of reference that you feel connected to that person in some way. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know.
absolutely, absolutely, that's one of the great things, and, I think about that when I think about other clients as well that I've been fortunate
Wu
enough
Tang
to
clans? No.
not Wu-Tangs, but funny enough, I had this, and I still am very good friends with her to this day. I mean, we don't speak, very often, but when we do, when we connect, it's like nothing has, passed or like time hasn't, stopped in a sense, right? Because we can pick up where we left off from. But she's a French lady, her name is Marie, and she taught me a lot in my career as well. Why? She was always very passionate, always very driven, and only focused on business from France. Okay. Which I didn't know that that could be a niche. This is when I used to handle international business for Morgan's Hotel Group and at the Royalton. And she loved selling the Royalton only to the French customers. And I remember she was, just very talented, really smart. She is very smart. She knows a lot about everything. Right. And I always thought she was like very, again, my perception, very conservative, very straight laced, just very buttoned up. But as I got to know her, I was like, wow, she's just like a cool woman who knows like a badass boss
Yeah.
and she gets it. And I found out that she did like hip hop.
There you go.
She did like the culture,
There you go.
and her boyfriend now, he actually is an artist who tags up.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so he's kind of like, known here in New York City.
Yeah.
He does these light bulbs.
Commissioned or street art or both?
Both.
Yeah.
So he was commissioned. He used to do a lot of art by Five Points in Long Island City. He tagged that up, but he was commissioned. And she would come up with these ideas that I was like, I don't even know if I'm understanding properly, And so we were working together. And this goes to like relationships, right? And really bonding. We had confirmed this program for Danone, right? Danone. And so it was like a big deal because, it was like a huge event milestone for their company. They were coming to New York City. At the time, I was working for Kimpton Hotels. I was selling the Eventi. And the Eventi was going through a kind of minor renovation with the lobby.
Okay.
When they first opened up that building, it's on 29th and 30th. The lobby was on the corner of 30th.
Okay.
Okay, so it was very small. It didn't really speak to, how grand, how beautiful the space was, right? They wanted to have more activations. Okay, fine. So a year after they opened thereabouts, they decided that they were going to redo the lobby and make it in the middle of the building. Now, I'm negotiating with Marie about Dannon. She's like, listen, this is really big. This is a big deal. All the CEOs, all the, C-level suite members are coming in. I'm like, oh my God, absolutely no problem. She's like, are you sure? I was like, it's just a minor tweak in the lobby. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, I did one of those, right? Like, what was I thinking? I should have
so the
known
work
better.
hadn't started yet. You just had renderings of what you expected it was going to be.
Yeah, and the way that it was presented to me, my general manager, God bless him, my whole team, maybe they did that, maybe they didn't, but this is common, as you
I
know, right,
do,
in
unfortunately.
renovation. And so they were like, Patricia, it's not gonna affect any business. This is gonna be completed. And I was like, all right, yeah, like if you're giving me your word, I'm gonna believe you. And of course, I know Marie, right? So I'm like, Marie, it's fine. It's not gonna affect it. This is gonna be over like in a weekend. Okay. Unbeknownst to me, I go to the hotel and there is like, boarded up, thin cardboard, like,
Yeah,
what am
yeah,
I, lumber?
yeah.
It looks like a construction zone. And
No,
I
no,
am
no.
like freaking out. My stomach is hurting. I'm getting the heart
How
palpitations.
far away was her arrival? Was she meant to
Well,
arrive?
no, so this is not even on arrival. This is just like maybe a week
Okay,
before.
okay.
Okay, the program is set
But
to
there's
arrive.
no way that it's going to be finished by the
No,
time.
absolutely not. It
Yeah,
is a huge undertaking.
sure,
Okay. I'm mad at myself because I'm like, my word is my
of
bond.
course.
This is not how I, conduct myself. But things happen in life.
Yeah.
So I call Marie and I'm like, look, Marie, this is a deal. Send her the pictures, right? So the cardboards, right? The lumber. And she's like, okay, okay, you know what we're gonna do? And as she's telling me this idea, I'm like, there's no way that she's saying what I think she's saying, right?
Yeah.
She's like, we're gonna like do wild style graffiti and we're gonna put Danone and we're gonna make it like really urban and New York City like welcomes you to the grit. And like she's like spinning it and spinning it. And I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, yeah, I'm gonna call the crew, I'm gonna call Maris and
That
we're
is
gonna have this
amazing.
done. And so she did. She had the company logo, like, welcome. And she really turned lemons into lemonade
You
and
would
maybe
think that would be the
Prosecco.
responsibility of I've been down this path all too often. Would
Right.
be the responsibility of the hotel to try and present a beautiful solution like that, to have a client that cool to take this construction in stride and make it into like a funky urban art scene as opposed to a construction zone. That's a A+ client.
That's an A-plus client for sure, and, the fact that she did that and, she could have turned around and been like, "Look, Patricia, this is it, like, it's over."
Yeah.
But she understood, and for that, I will always be loyal and faithful to her
But
to this
I
day.
here's the thing too, I've been had in the past, I won't go into the story, but I've had people lie to me flat out about construction, and they knew what was going on and they told me exactly the opposite of what it was, and my client goes there and finds that the salesperson pretty much lied to get the business, and it wasn't that it was like, whoops, I didn't know. They knew specifically what was going to happen.
Yeah.
They misrepresented the scope of the construction while it was happening. It wasn't like it was a mystery or was something in the future. The fact that you stood up and said, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to hit this head on. I'm going to call my client and not try and hide from this." I think that also speaks to your integrity. We were talking a little bit before the podcast about this is a relationship business, and so having those tough conversations is absolutely part of that. I don't
It
know how
is, and
you.
it's uncomfortable,
Yeah, it
right?
is.
And one of those, and part of that conversation is kind of just like going head on and just saying like, "Listen, this is not ideal. Thinking about a solution always helps too. Like,
Sure.
obviously, you have a problem and you want to counter with a solution, but I really didn't have a solution. And I'm
Thank
like,
God she did.
yeah, seriously. So she's great for that. And so funny, she had actually hit me up on LinkedIn a few weeks ago and she was like, "What's up? I'm working here." So, Marie, I'm going to call you soon.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
So you came from Schrager Hotels, eventually making your way to the New York City and Company, New York City and Co. Tell me the difference between working for a destination versus working for hotels, which you're back in hotels now. You now represent a very fine hotel that we have in common down in Hollywood, Florida, the Hilton Diplomat, or
That's
the
right.
how what is it called, the Diplomat Resort and Spa, or is there?
It is transitioning into a Signia by Hilton May 1st. So only one of 5, 6 hotels within the brand.
Cool.
So really excited about that. But to answer your
Yeah, the
question,
contrast between
yeah.
representing an entire city versus representing one hotel.
Yeah. So when I think about, what I did in terms of like the hotel, right? And for many of us, we started in operations, front office, reservations. I did a stint in housekeeping, conference services.
You came your way up through the ranks.
Up through the ranks, and I enjoyed it very much, and I remember when, I used to do the reservations department. I mean, I'm gonna, like, age myself here a little bit, but all the reservation requests would come in via fax.
There you go.
And I remember, like, we'd have to check the email once a day,
Fax isn't
and it
bad. If you
was
had said like Pony Express or something, we'd have a different thing to say.
no, but fax is bad. Fax is like, come on.
Yeah.
And the fact that you only checked email once a day, and it was always like somebody from Europe. You could tell like the cutting edge, and you're like, oh, roll your
And
eyes,
you're like, oh my gosh, I have 5 emails I got to get back
I know,
to.
I know.
Yeah.
Funny story. I have a friend of mine. He's my son's godfather. His name is James.
Yeah.
Okay, and he had stayed at one of the hotels that I represented, and he was like, Patricia, I had such a great time. Like we, priority serviced him. He had access to the pool. He, went to the restaurants, and he was like, but the only complaint that I have is you guys didn't have a fax machine.
No.
And I'm like,
What year
James,
was this now?
this is last year.
No, no,
This
no,
is
no, no,
last year.
no.
So I'm like, so I asked him, I said, James, what are you talking about? Is this a joke? And he's like, no, I'm serious. And I said, what could you possibly need a fax machine for?
Right.
And he was like, no, I needed to have my doctor sign something and they asked me to fax it. And I'm like, okay, I'm sure we could have made, arrangements for you if you would have asked. He's like, yeah, but you didn't have it in the business center. And I'm like, well, good. Food for thought, James. Thank you.
Did you have a payphone, a rotary payphone as well? No,
Well, I told him, I said, James, 1980
for
called.
real.
And so we have a good laugh about it all the time. And I always get on him. I'm
That's
like, they don't
hilarious.
have a fax machine.
Well, I don't know if I trust a doctor though that needed something to be faxed in. Aren't there better ways these days?
Well, okay, so I guess like he's
Doctors
a
have moved
creature.
to like EI.
They have, they have.
AI. I just said that in
You
Spanish.
said
Yeah, la IA. No,
and I understood you.
my
I was
days
like,
of
yeah.
Colombia are kicking
No.
in. Doctors are relying on AI these days. Yeah,
Yeah, they are. But, I guess this is like an old school doctor. And so, James is an old school cat, but, he's getting there. But, being that he's old school, he's very much into social media. He's going to kill me.
are his solutions like leeches to like?
Like, no. He's very like up on it. You know what I mean? And
Okay,
he's like up on the slang too, because he's a coach.
okay,
Right. So he's like always around like, younger kids. He's a coach for kids in the public school system.
okay.
Okay. So, yes. So I'm not trying to get at
It's
James, but
all
I thought
good.
that was funny.
I think that is kind of funny as well. So
Right? But anyway, so going back to your
yes,
question
yes,
about
yes.
selling hotels versus destination, you know, at the core of it, for me, and I think for anyone who's a successful sales individual, is selling a product that you're passionate about,
Mm,
that you love, And so if you're able to do that, then I think you're like more than 60% accomplished of what you need to do,
yeah,
right? Obviously, you have to know the products, you have to be able to, manage and really represent the or present the solutions to clients and customers that are requiring what they need. So for me, selling New York City was absolutely exciting.
mm,
It was thrilling. It was also very, it was a lot of hard work, right? Because, like for many of us, right, when we say we're going on sites, we're going to Greece, we're going to go to Florida, like, oh my God, you work so hard. Yes, you do, because you don't really get to enjoy that really because you're focused, right? You're
sure.
working. And yes, of course, there's moments of happiness and fun that you pepper in. But it was a lot of work. I had to really curate and make sure that the hotel members that I was, my stakeholders were getting the value, right? Because I know certain cities do it different, but in New York City, it's a pay to play. So you have to pay to be a part of the collection of products that you represent, even though New York City is pretty iconic on its own, right?
Sure.
But you need that little push to open up the door for certain customers. So I think that was a little challenging for me. It's like all those hotels and those restaurants, like, what are you doing for me? And making sure that like I provided value to them.
Makes sense.
And that was like I guess my own pressure of making sure, like, am I giving you enough? Am I communicating effectively? Like, what do you need?
Are you getting your money's worth as a participant in this endeavor? Yeah,
Exactly. And so, that was challenging because there's so much,
sure.
and you want to spread the
Of
love,
course.
and for me, I gravitated towards kind of like those independent boutique hotels, right? That maybe didn't have like the brand awareness.
Yeah.
So that was a great opportunity to kind of elevate those different
Well,
products.
it comes in your blood, right? You work for Schrager Hotels. You eventually went to Kimpton Hotels, which is another very. It's become iconic. It's now part of IHG, but it was the neighborhood hotel that didn't look like the other big boxes. They
Yeah.
really prided themselves on being very very local. I mean, now this is a trend across all
Of
hotels,
course, yeah, and all brands.
lifestyle brands, and,
Yeah,
they try and capture the destination where they are. I appreciate that. I think Kimpton was on the cutting edge of that.
they were, and I learned about Kimpton. I worked with someone who came from Kimpton in Washington, DC, and she came to work for Morgan's, and she was always comparing Morgan's Ian Traeger hotels to Kimpton. And I remember one day I said, "Kruskaya, if Kimpton is so great, why did you leave?" And she was like, "'Cause there's no Kimptons in New York." And I was like, "Okay." And at the time, there weren't, right? This is like, 2006, 2005, whatever.
Yeah.
And, she was always talking about what a great company it was. And in fact, we had, secured an incentive trip to go to Washington, DC, the sales trip,
Okay.
and we ended up staying at a Kimpton,
Nice.
okay? And I remember checking in, and this is a true story. The gentleman at the desk asked me, "Do you want some wine?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm not with the group." And he was like, "What group?" And I was like, "The group that gets wine." And he was like, "We do this every day at 5 o'clock." And I'm like, "What? You do this every day?" And he was like, "Yeah." So I thought that was really great. And just like a lot of little things, right? And I think a lot of brands as a whole have caught on to that, that you really have to invest in the internal customer if you want to get the most for the, external.
Beautifully said. Yeah. To go back to that point about Kimpton, though, it's customary for a lot of hotels to have coffee in the morning from 6 to 9. But Kimpton's brand standard is you have a wine hour. Is it just a
Yeah,
regular
it's like from 5 to 6,
5 to 6?
sometimes they enhance it,
Hmm.
and, other brands
Complimentary
like
wine in the lobby for
complimentary
anyone
wine.
staying at the hotel.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, other brands, like, I'm really proud of, the Diplomat and Hilton. I mean, they have their own personality and flair, which is cool, and I say that because for me, I wanna sell and I wanna be a part of something that evokes emotions,
Sure.
and it's about those different intangibles,
Sure.
and I feel that, and so that's, a great opportunity for me, and it just makes me feel comfortable all around.
Let's meld a little bit of these two. Talk about the importance of the passion you feel. You talk about relationships, you talk about feeling passionate about your destination or your hotel that you're selling. What about the relationships within the hotel? How important is it that you feel connected to the team? Because and I'll tell you something from, having worked in hotels and having worked with clients trying to book hotels, you can
Yeah,
almost tell instinctively, especially from the outside, where the teams are connected and where the teams are not. I might be dealing with one person, but that level of connection that I feel coming towards me as a client, I think is representative not only of the individual, but you
sure.
can tell when they're connected to a larger team that supports them, that gets them, that they feel empowered. And I can automatically tell as well when they're not. You ask a person a question, they're like deer in the headlights. They go ask 15 people for approval. I'm kind of setting up a long question here, but talk a little bit more about relationships within the hotel to feel connected to the place you work.
Yeah. That's super important because that's your team, that's your home. You want to have a cohesive feeling. And much like your external relationships, you got to cultivate that within, right? So you have to ensure that you're on the same team with your operations, that you actually bond with them and they're not just someone there. You know what I
Have
mean?
you had a moment where you felt that a relationship was at risk, or there was a barrier up between you and either someone in operations or someone on your sales team that you had to face down and overcome that obstacle?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. For me, I've had, opportunities where I've worked with some great leaders and maybe not so great leaders as well. And that's okay,
Yeah.
right? Because that's life. But I did have this one direct report early on in my career. I must have been, I mean, this is before I had Ethan, my son, who's 20 now. I must have been like 19, 20, and she was someone that was responsible for the international market, FIT, wholesale business at the time, which was very lucrative. And it still is, right? So I was paired up to work and support this representative. Her name is Sandra Pokorny.
Hi,
And
Sandra.
hey, Sandra. So she's French Canadian.
You're with
And
your French connections here.
I
Yeah.
know. I'm starting to notice a
Pattern.
pattern. So no, but I give love to everybody. So I had to support Sandra, and I remember thinking like she's so disconnected from everyone, right? Like she never like really bonds. She never laughs at the jokes. She's always like work, work, work. And then having had spent time with her, I realized, okay, number one, there's a language barrier,
Yeah.
right? Because there's a lot of jokes that don't translate well. She's also super hyper focused, right?
Hmm.
Because she's, here on a visa. right? So there comes that like immigrant mentality. You got to work hard, you got to hustle,
Sure.
which I respect.
Sure.
So she didn't really have time to like be making jokes and playing around. And she had a very hefty goal. So I get it. And after like learning about her and kind of knowing her experience and being in New York City and wanting to be successful, I got it. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay. And we became really good friends. And I'll tell you this, she was so proud to live in New York City. She was so happy. She was like, I can't believe it. I want you to come see my apartment. I'm like, "Okay." She's like, "I live on Madison Avenue." And I'm like, "Oh my God. She must be making hella money,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Upper East Side, super excited, like by all the fashion stores and boutiques." I go to her house, I go to her apartment.
The
Jeremy,
napkin.
to this day, I have not seen an apartment that small. You walk in, the kitchen is there, but then the bedroom is like a
Yeah.
loft
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
top.
Yeah. She slept standing up against the wall or what?
Yeah, basically, like, you have to climb up the stairs, go into, like, the bunk area.
Sure.
She was so proud and so happy, and she was like, "What do you think?" And I was like, "Oh my god, amazing! What are you kidding me?" But, that was such a realization for me too, right?
Sure.
Because wow, she's, like, living the
That's
dream.
the
Because
thing, right? How do people define happiness? Some people are not happy unless they have a mansion and 5 cars. Other people are happy with a tiny
yeah,
little place in the middle of a vibrant city that speaks to their soul. That's
that's
important
right,
too.
that's beautifully said, and she was, and so, we bonded, and after the years, she started calling me, Kit Kat because
Why?
so she would go out to lunch and she'd be like, "Do you want anything?" I'm like, "No, but you know what? If they have a Kit Kat, let me get a Kit Kat." So she'd be like, "Okay, Kit Kat." So she would call me Kit
That's how you
Kat, which
stay
is what I thought
skinny.
was
You
cute.
skip lunch and just have a Kit Kat.
Just, one per meal.
Well done.
Just
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One stick,
yeah,
one
that's
divided
it.
thing.
That's it. That's
You
my
know,
diet.
what you mentioned though about culture and realize you're picking up on different people's cultures or how you struggled perhaps at first to understand her. That is such a relevant thing too. And one of the things I'm very grateful for travel having given me is an appreciation and the necessity, I would say, to shut up first because sometimes people are rude. They're rude. They're rude. It doesn't matter. But sometimes people are really not being rude. They're just different than you. They're saying something in a manner that you're not accustomed to. You would say it differently. It doesn't make
Of
them
course.
worse. It doesn't make them better. It just makes them different. And to kind of challenge your paradigms, to question your assumptions, and give people the benefit of the doubt at first. But how many friendships do we lose to initial misunderstandings because we're not willing to see the people as they are and to see
Right.
them in their cultural context?
Absolutely. And I think that's very true to this day. I think as a whole, we should have more empathy, right? Whether it's your colleagues, customers, people, and just kind of understanding and putting yourself in that mainframe really kind of helps to like bring down those barriers and maybe, those judgments at face value. So yeah.
We're going to wrap this up soon. You are as genuine as a person as I know in this industry. Drives you? What is your motivation? And I have one follow up question after that.
Yeah. So what drives me, obviously, I want to be able to impact and touch, people and curate and have community relationships. It's not just about work, it's about balance. So what motivates me is just ensuring that my kids know, that my family, my friends know that I'm authentic, that I do what I love and yeah, I think that's it. I don't know how else to answer that because that's like a really in-depth question,
Well, it
I
talks
think.
more about who you are and not about what you accomplish. And I think that's beautiful. You have goals to be an authentic person. And that to me is
Yeah.
more, some people answer that question and I want to get, I want to achieve, I want to do
Oh, no.
something. The fact that you answer so naturally about who you want to be and how you want to show up in this life, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Tell me one thing you're proud of. Tell
Yeah.
me something you've done in your career. You're like, man, either I didn't know I was going to be able to accomplish that and I did, or just something that inherently you're very proud that you got over the goal line.
I would say public speaking.
Okay.
Public speaking was really challenging for me, for many. And what I did to overcome that was to take it head on, to take courses, go to training sessions, practice, read. And so for me, especially when I was selling the destination of New York City, I would have to do presentations to hundreds of
Not
individuals.
easier for someone who has stage fright.
Yeah, so I really had to hone in on that, and I'm really proud of that accomplishment, and also just always knowing a little bit about who you're speaking to, just prepping, right? I feel like that regardless of whether you're presenting at work or, fun or even friends, I'm like, let me learn about them. I have a good friend. Her name is Nandini. She's from Mauritius. I didn't know where Mauritius was. So I wanted to like bond with her. So I started researching like, stuff about Mauritius. And she had asked me, she was like, did you Google my country? I was like, yes, because I was trying to impress her and I wanted her to know,
Of
So I
course.
think always doing a little bit of research, knowing who you're with, who you're speaking to goes a long way.
What a beautiful way to kind of show interest in someone else and, step past yourself into a zone you might not be comfortable in to try and learn about someone else. If that doesn't summarize hospitality and what we do on a regular basis, I don't know what does. Anything, any last thoughts you want to share before we wrap up this podcast?
I think this was great. I love this platform. I love hearing everyone's stories. It's not really common for me to talk about myself. I love asking about people, understanding their origin stories, so to speak. So this was really great. And I want to continue to see it thrive.
I could hear the hesitation in your voice when I asked you to do it. I know this is a big step for you. I feel like you did it
I
as a
can't
personal favor, and I'm very grateful for that.
I'm so glad that you picked up
I
on that
did.
because I was like, "Oh, this is a toughie." And you've been, talking about this for a
I
while
have.
and getting me on here. So I'm really happy that I did it. This is actually a huge accomplishment.
Let's just say that if you enjoy hearing other people's stories, I can guarantee you people are really going to enjoy hearing yours. Patty
Thank you.
Yankee, Patty,
J-Mod.
really appreciate you coming on. And guys, thanks for tuning in to Unhospitality. We are telling the untold stories of hospitality. We joke that we're the number one podcast in the world. The goal is to become the number one podcast in the world, at least in the hospitality space. So spread the word. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, safe travels.